degrees below.
Oh my God. I didn't see that.
Yeah. So, just a quick review of yesterday. We went through the federal government overview. We talked about some of the nuances of federal versus commercial business. We talked about some of the unique features of government business and how the laws tend to benefit one person, how there tends to be a lot of regulations. But typically, if you can get established in the federal marketplace, it provides an ongoing revenue stream for your company because you can grow your business both within the agency that you're in, plus you can use your experience with one agency as past performance for another agency and grow your business horizontally across the agencies as well. Today what we're going to do is really focus on what the contractor's process is. So some of it you'll find very similar to what happens in your commercial marketplace, just like you have to put proposals together in the commercial side of the house, you're also going to be putting proposals together over here. There's a certain amount of marketing and business development that you're doing on the government side, but there's also some constraints that we want to talk about to emphasize some of the differences so that you don't get yourselves in trouble when you're trying to market to the federal government and that you come across as a competent contractor. So we're going to start with just the process overview.
Ernie, you said all these slides would be available.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're going to put all this stuff in Edgit, and Edgit will be, we'll send each of you a link, and you can go in, change your password, and then you'll have access to the system. So we're uploading everything right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then, in addition, all the slides, the lectures that I've been giving you have all been recorded, so we'll be putting those up too. So, just given your understanding of the federal government marketplace and the things we talked about yesterday, what are some of the challenges that face contractors?
Understanding the access, how to acquire access.
Right, so part of it is just figuring out how to get your foot in the door, right? Because it is a unique customer. They do buy a lot, and they have a need for everything that you sell. It's just trying to figure out who the right person is that can actually sign on the dotted line to get you that contract. What's another challenge that face contractors?
Writing the RF, or answering the RFP correctly in their eyes.
Yeah, they're really big on compliance. So they actually have to see that you have said, yes, I will do these things in your proposal response. So when we start talking about proposals, the thing to keep in mind is that they can only evaluate what's between the covers of your proposal. So they can look at your technical solution, they can look at your cost, your price, they can look at your management solution, your past performance. All of those things are all within the confines of your proposal. If you have like a really whiz-bang center of excellence over here and you don't talk about it in the proposal, it doesn't get evaluated. So you always want to make sure that you're telling them what you have in response to what they're doing. So they give you the requirements and you're going to respond back with what your capabilities are, but always answer that question for them, so what? Like, why do they care that you do certain things? And tell them what the benefit is to them. When we get into the proposal section, we'll talk about some strategies for doing that. But it's important to keep in mind that they can only evaluate. Or say, for example, you're an incumbent and you do great work every day, and it comes time for proposal, and you've got some other brand new proposals with brand new customers, and you sort of shortchange this proposal because they know me. We've been working together all these years. They're gonna, they know what we can do. That's not good because you're being evaluated against companies who are trying to steal this business away from you, right? So you want to make sure you present yourself in the best possible light, and from the government's mentality, just like we as consumers are, right? What have you done for me lately? Yeah, I know you did a great job in that implementation that happened 3 months ago, but what have you done for me lately? And you always want to keep that on the forefront of your mind, that the customer has to choose you all over again from a competitive landscape. So yes, you have a lot of benefit to the fact that you are the incumbent, but you always want to make sure that you emphasize what kinds of things that you're doing for them, what kind of improvements you're making, that you constantly show them your value add so that you can keep the business. What other challenges face contractors? What happened just recently?
Keeping the government up.
Yeah, and just to let you know, so I have a contract with DAU, I get paid on a monthly basis. I haven't been paid for November yet. So November, December, and then soon to be January. Because when the government shut down, the prime contractor didn't get the money, and therefore they don't pay their subcontractors. So, you know, in the DC area, and you'll find this, because a lot of DC companies only focus on federal business, they don't have any commercial business. You know, when the government shuts down for like 5 or 6 days, companies can go under because, you know, they can't make payroll, they can't do the things that they're, you know, they can't get the money that they need to be using to run the business. So my only point in telling you that is normally the government is a very steady customer. They, you know, as we said yesterday, they have to have funding before they get into anything with you, any kind of contract. So you will get paid. But the problem is that when we go through these kind of shutdowns, that has an impact on your bottom line. So just be aware of that. Okay, good. All right, so there's different ways that you can secure revenue from government contracts. So the bulk of this class is going to be as though you are a prime contractor directly to the government. But I wanted to start this lecture with some of the other avenues that you can use, because if you have a portfolio that takes advantage of different strategies, if any one strategy isn't working for you, you have other strategies you can fall back on. So you are a prime contractor on federal contracts. So when you are the prime contractor, so when you're in the direct relationship with the government, we call that a prime contractor relationship, you own all the risk for the program. You're the belly button they press if there's anything wrong. You're the one that has to, if it's a firm fixed price, you have to perform for the dollar amount you said you were going to perform for. You also own all the reward for the contract. So the whole profit comes directly to you. You own that side of it as well. So you've got the risk and the reward when you're the prime contractor. You also get the past performance citation. What do I mean by that? So the government, when an RFP comes out, what they want to do is they want to get an understanding of whether you have experience with the size and scope of their particular procurement. That you've done there, you've been there and done that before. So from the government's perspective, just like it would be from your perspective, if I'm Department of Energy, the best possible performance, past performance you could have is with who? If I'm Department of Energy, who's the best possible past performance you could have with who? Exactly. If you've been in my backyard and we've been working together as teammates for a while, that's the best possible past performance. Beyond that, what would it be?
Department of Energy has nukes and DOD.
Yeah, so, and the broader government as a whole. So any agency within the federal government, that would be like the next possible best performance, past performance. And then what would be the third tier?
State one.
Either state or your commercial contracts, right? Anything that would be of similar size and scope. So when we talk about size and scope, we're saying, you know, if the RFP is for something that's, you know, like in the $100,000 range, have you run contracts that are $100,000? Have you had the same similar type scope as what the government's asking for? So those, when you're doing past performance, think about a bullseye. You want to get as close to what they're doing as possible. If you don't have any past performance, they can't take that as a negative or a positive. It's just, it's neutral. But when you're the prime contractor, you have the direct relationship with the government. Therefore, when you have government contracts, you can cite those as past performance. If you're a subcontractor to a prime contractor to the federal government, in other words, that you're that second tier down here, you can't talk about your past performance with the government because your contract was not with the government. Your contract was in support of a prime contractor, and they were the ones that had the relationship. And the reason why this becomes important is because when the government writes up, when you have a contract directly with the government, at the end of every year, they will evaluate your performance. And they will put your performance into a rating system. There's several out there. One is CPARS. and one is Peepers. And what happens is they will write up an evaluation of you, and they'll send it to you, and it gives you a chance to look at it, and if you have any comment about anything they said, you can write your comment, and then those two documents taken together go into one of these main systems. And what that allows the government to do is to pull those reports to see how you've performed on past contracts. So that's what I'm talking about with regard to past performance. Now, if you're a subcontractor and the government asked you, please explain your experience with providing these services, and you were a subcontractor to Lockheed for an NIH deal, you could write a paragraph about your experience, about how you were supporting Lockheed, but you wouldn't be in one of those formal government systems like Peepers or CPARS. And sometimes what the government requires is for you to tell them how you've performed. So CPARS, for example, after the government gives you a formal rating, evaluation, they actually rate you on a scale of 1 to 5. And some government agencies will say, tell us what your CPARS ratings were for your previous contracts. So as prime contractor, you would have CPARS ratings. If you were a subcontractor, you wouldn't have a CPARS rating because your prime wouldn't do that for you. And the last item up here, when you're a prime contractor, you work directly with the government on all aspects of the contract. So think of it as a few partnerships that happen. Your program manager from your side, from your company, will work directly with the program manager from the government side. Your contracts person will work directly with their contracting officer or their contracting officer representative. And so you kind of keep those relationships established throughout the contract so that you can be in sync with your corollary person on the government side. Another way that you can be in federal business is you can be a subcontractor on federal contracts. So there can be the government has that prime contract relationship, and then you're a subcontractor to that prime contractor. In that case, what happens is think of a contract baseline. So the RFP comes out and it says, you need to provide this whole thing. What the prime contractor does is they break it up into various pieces, right? And when they break it up into various pieces, for each piece, what do you think they do? Something we talked about yesterday. What do they have to do right before that, though? We talked about it yesterday. Miller. Miller.
Hey.
I know you about vowels.
8.
S.
Yeah. R.
Oh, I got it. I like to solve. Make or buy.
Right, they do a make or buy decision, right? Just like the government did yesterday that we talked about. The government, the prime contractor does a make or buy decision for each of these pieces. And that looks like, do I want to do this internally myself? Or do I want to subcontract it out to somebody else? So if I'm thinking about whether I want to do it myself, I can say, do I have the right resources? So sometimes I have the right resources, but what's going on with my right resources?
They're busy.
Right, they're doing other projects, right? So maybe I have them, but they're not available. Or maybe I don't have them. Or maybe it's not cost effective for me to provide them and I can get them cheaper by using a subcontractor. Whatever the rationale is, for each component of the contract, the prime contractor makes that make or buy decision. And then when they decide to, that they're going to make this piece, but they're going to buy, and then they're going to make, all of these will be provided by internal prime contractor resources. All of these will be subcontracted out, and they'll have to go through the RFP process that you talked about to figure out who are the best candidates for these pieces. Why do I, as a prime contractor, have to go through an RFP process? This is a topic for a later week, but why do I have to do that?
You have to make sure that the piece you're getting from somebody else meets the spec that you promised you were going to meet with the government.
Exactly. I have to make sure that the subcontractor is going to do exactly what I've stepped up to the prime contractor. And the government is very concerned about, they want to make sure that I don't give all my business to my sister. Why is that?
Because of the perception about being fair and equitable for all.
Exactly. So full and open competition, the government has to do it at their level. They're going to impose that on the prime contractor to make sure I do it at my level with all my subcontractors.
Do they make any exceptions? Because we're just kind of thinking, again, everybody in here, we want you to do your own stuff, but SPAM and COE, we are looking at helping facilitate some potential, being the prime, and then for those companies that don't have the resources, ability, or whatever to go after their own contracts, that we get the contract and then subcontract with them. But we would be very specific because we know what our availability is. Is there a way to do that without having to put it out for RFP?
So we're going to have a whole section on this,
Okay.
on subcontracting. But yeah, but basically, the answer is yeah. You can select certain companies as being your strategic partners,
Okay.
and then use that as the relationship. So this is what's required for when the government issues that original RFP. Prime contractors will figure out the entire scope of what's required, figure out who's going to make, which pieces they're going to do themselves, and which ones they're going to subcontract out. So now let's say you are subcontractor 1, and you have won this piece of business. So as a sub, you are responsible for the risk of this part of the contract. You're not responsible for the risk of this over here or the risk over here. You're responsible for this risk because that's the piece you want. You're also responsible for the reward. You get the reward for this piece, right? So that's what you get as well. You don't get the past performance, like the CPARS rating or the PPERS rating, but you can write about what you did in your proposals in future government contracts. It's just that you don't have the formal past performance rating. And your customer is the person who's responsible for this piece of the prime contract. So you don't have any interface directly with the government, although you may be located on site with the government to perform that work. Pretty much anything contractual related should go between the government contracting officer and the prime contractor, contracts person, or between the government project manager and the prime contractor's project manager. And then whatever happens here should get flowed down to you. Everybody okay?
Where does the contracting officer representative fit in?
Sure, great question. So, okay, let's talk about the contracting officer. They have a warrant, and so they can spend up to X millions of dollars or X hundreds of thousands of dollars. What they do is by a letter, they delegate a certain portion of their function to a contracting officer representative. Typically, the contracting officer representative, even though it would sound like it would come from the contract shop, normally comes from the program shop. So, and the reason why they have cores is because, let's say for example, I'm in DC and I want to contract with the Navy, and part of the work is done out in San Diego. The government has to have somebody out in San Diego to verify that I'm doing the work I'm supposed to do. So they don't want to fly somebody from the East Coast to the West Coast all the time to make sure I've done all my deliverables. So they pick someone in San Diego to oversee my work out in San Diego and perform that function as a core. So one contract can have multiple cores. If you have locations all over the place, you can have multiple cores. And what the core will do, and we'll talk about all the responsibilities of a core, but basically they provide that oversight. So when we talked about the lavatories yesterday, and we said there's that sign sheet that says every time it's been cleaned, that's a monitoring mechanism to make sure the contractor has done their work.